Good morning, everyone. We are delighted to have you with us today. My name is Shreya Goyal, and I'm a first-year Masters in Public Policy student at the Harvard Kennedy School. And I had the pleasure of putting this panel together alongside my co-panel manager, Nikhil Chopra. Over the next 50 minutes, we'll dive into what's driving the male loneliness crisis, how it is affecting our society, and what it takes to respond with empathy, accountability, and real support. Our goal is not just to surface ideas, but to interrogate assumptions and open up new ways of thinking.
Thank you, Shreya. Very good morning to everyone. My name is Nikhil. I'm Shreya's co-panel manager. And today it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. On stage, starting from my extreme left, we have Mr. Nikhil Taneja, the co-founder of Yuva, who brings a youth-first perspective on how young men make meaning.
Yes, absolutely. He's right. We should clap. I agree with the applause.
In the middle, we have Carina, the founder and CEO of HumCare, which is a health tech platform reimagining how people, families, and organizations access healthcare in India. And guiding today's discussion, we're fortunate to have Ashish Thakur, a doctoral trainee psychologist with Harvard University, who's going to help us navigate both the nuance and the big questions in this topic. So together, we will dive into the topic, and after the discussion, we'll open up the floor for the last 10 minutes for a Q&A. We encourage you to actively engage in this conversation. With that, I want to welcome all of the panelists. Thank you so much.
So good morning once again, and men, masculinity, mental health, India. Such a critical intersectionality, right? I can see people nodding. I can't see upstairs. I put my glasses on my head so that I'm not nervous looking at you. But we'll begin with the first question for Nikhil. And of course, when I say Nikhil, it's not necessarily restricted to Nikhil. Carina will add on with her experience. And I may add on with something that's maybe not so significant. Maybe humor. Nikhil, you've traveled to campuses across India, 35 plus cities in India, speaking to thousands of students, young people, men and women. Nikhil has also hosted the show, Be a Man, Yaar, which has had celebrities like Vicky Kaushal who have spoken about masculinity in a manner that media has not seen before, in a manner that we have not heard before. From what you witnessed in these conversations across Be a Man, Yaar with various people and with conversations with college students across campuses, was wondering if you had something to share about what is going on with Indian men right now. Any experience that you'd like to share?
Thank you, Ashish. Can I also just first start by thanking Shreya and Nikhil, who've been amazing panel managers over the last few weeks and months, and Arundhati and everyone at Harvard who actually got us here. And to all of you who have come here, who are sitting over here very quietly, feel free to be loud. I would appreciate that. Actually, it keeps the nervousness less. Yes, exactly, absolutely. I know it's a dense topic, but doesn't mean that we cannot enjoy ourselves while listening. But I really appreciate everyone being here and the fact that we're having this discussion at Harvard. This is such an important conversation. It is advocacy that I'm dedicating my life to. So just to be able to come to Harvard to have this conversation means the world to me. As Ashish, and again, I just want to also thank Ashish, who's come in last minute as a moderator, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful human being, and you should look up his work. He's doing some incredible work in mental health. As Ashish said, just to set some context, I have been to about 150 campuses in India. I've been on the road for 6 to 9 months, visiting over 34 Indian cities, north, south, east, west, northeast. I've gone to IITs, IIMs, AIMS, NITs, NIFTs, now Harvard. With the intention of creating safe spaces for young folks and just listening to them. I go into these sessions and speak a lot about myself. I try to be as vulnerable as possible, speak about masculinity, gender, mental health, then open up the forum and create a non-judgmental space to ask everyone What do you want to speak? If this is a space that I'm giving, and I would love to hear you, what would you like to say? I want to ask you, when I do this across colleges, I've met over 15,000 Indian students. When women are given safe spaces in India, what do you think is the number one thing they talk about? Anyone over here? Sorry? Some of them sure, absolutely have this any safety? Who said safety? Yes, that is literally the number one thing women in India talk about. Anywhere in India, young Indians, young women, you go anywhere in the country and you listen, and it's young women talking about gender harassment, safety, how difficult it is to be a young woman in our country at any given point of time. And if I asked you what is the number one thing men talk about, what would you say? Sorry? Emotional maturity. I love that there's a woman answering. Money. It's sports. It's all women answering for men. I thought mansplaining was a thing. What happened to that? Guys. All the women are trying to figure the men out, and the men don't know what to say.
Say something.
This is actually very in line with what happens in these sessions. It is like a lot of women speaking and men just being like, "Mujhe bhi bolna hai kya? Vulnerable baat hai, mujhe bhi karni hai kya?" Women? Yeah. So yes, one of the things they definitely talk about is like dating and love. The other thing they talk about is career and career pressures, which is really the number one thing that most men talk about. But when you go beyond that, and I try as much as possible to push and kind of go into a slightly nuanced, deeper space, what do you think is the number one issue that men speak of? Who said that? Again, a woman. Thank you, ma'am. Absolutely, it is loneliness, and maybe the men are not speaking about that because they're also lonely. This is not a punchline. It is actually a truth. But it is, can you imagine, going to across the country, you would not, at first it was shocking and then, surprising and then unsurprising after a point of time that this is what they all speak about across the country. I'll tell you what the difference is when women speak about safety and men speak about loneliness, right? When a woman comes in a safe space in a campus area in India and speaks about something that they've gone through, the thing that you notice after that is just absolutely beautiful and cathartic. You will see them shout out other women in their life and saying, I've gone through this, but that's my best friend over there, and because of her, I'm able to survive. I've gone through this, but if she wasn't here, I don't know if I would have kind of continued going on. Or they would come on stage and just kind of have tears or well up, and there'd be some woman from somewhere and just running to the stage to give her a hug. It's the most beautiful thing that I've seen over and over and over again. I was in an all-girls college in Hyderabad where this happened to it was like a group therapy session, and like about 150 women were like crying and hugging each other, and there was this one male professor who was just like, what is happening? So on the other hand, there is, when a man comes in a space like this, and it takes a lot of time to men to open up, like we could see today, there's not many who volunteered this information, but when a man actually gets vulnerable and says that, oh, I feel lonely, I don't know, I don't think I have a space to open up about what I'm going through. I don't know where that space is. I don't know who to talk to. There is silence after that. It's no one saying that, and it could be majority boys in that college, and there's no boy saying that, hey, you can talk to me. Or coming and saying, don't be lonely, I'm also here, and I'm going to give you a hug. That never happens. Mostly I'm typically in a college and telling a young boy who said this, and telling other boys, does anyone want to give him a hug? And like, again, silence. And then I have to really push someone, just go and like, somebody. And I've been to campuses where there are 3 or 4 men who would come in succession and say, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I don't know who to talk to, I don't know who to talk to. I'm like, why are you not talking to each other? You 4 have said you're lonely. Talk to each other. And the issue over here, and of course I'm starting with on a light note, but the issue with this is that men don't know how to have this conversation. Now, and there is a very strong reason behind that, right? There is, again, the first thing that, I'm going to do one more thing before, I know this is I have to set context, and after this I'll try to give shorter answers, but the context is extremely important. I do one more experiment in all the campuses I go to. I ask everybody in the campus, what is the one word that comes to your mind when you think of the name, when you think of mother? What is the first word that comes to your mind? Love, absolutely, everywhere. Love, care, affection, empathy, hugs, warmth, right? What is the first word that comes to mind when you think father? Respect? Fear? Fear, respect? Protection, discipline, responsibility, anger. Imagine this, okay? Everyone in unison, love. First of all, most of the guys, people don't know कि father को बोलना क्या बोले. I don't even know what is my father. What is my father? And then the answers come out, and then it's typically fear, it's typically anger, it's typically discipline, it's typically, again, protection, safety, whatever it is, right? But this is the problem in our country when, and I would say the world at large, but particularly in India, right? The first understanding you have of what is a woman in your life is your mother, and that is an affectionate, kind, empathetic space. The first understanding you have of what is a man in your life is your father, and that is a fearful, aggressive, scary space. And so you are more comfortable as men to open up in front of other women because that is what you understand. Women will give you that space. But you don't know how to open up in front of a man because you've seen your father and you're just like, I don't know if I say something, will I be judged? Will I be shamed? Will I be bullied? Will I be mocked? Will someone make fun of me and talk about it and make everyone call me like some name? And that is the reason why most men don't talk among each other. Because they have seen what happens at home when you open up. They're constantly told you can't cry, you can't feel pain, you have to grow up, you have to be a man. And in that system, where that socialization is so strong and it's so scary, how do you break out of it? Which is why any person who actually comes up in a forum and says, I'm lonely, is doing some of the bravest things that I would say any boy in our country would be doing. And then it becomes very difficult for other men also to be that brave at that point of time. But after I leave a campus, the number of messages I get from men saying that, sir, mujhe bhi baat karni thi, main kar nahi paya. I also wanted to say something I couldn't say. The last thing I want to say, when you're talking about the anecdotes and experiences, I kid you not, I have had boys come up to me in different parts of the country saying things like, can I have a hug? And I'm like, sure. And I've given them a hug. And I've heard from multiple boys, not just one. This is the first hug I've gotten in my entire life. I've had boys say that no one in my life has said, I love you to me before, ever. I've had boys say things like, I have never been touched after I was a child. Like you're starved for intimacy. You're starved for touch. That is what we are playing with. So when you're talking about male loneliness, it's a very, very deep and very, very dense and scary thing. And I feel like we should just have a little bit more conversation about this to understand this better. But again, not just with women who are actually very eager to have this conversation. The more I've seen it, we need more men to have this conversation. So I really hope today all the men over here will interact, will ask questions. I'm also doing an AMA tomorrow. I'm just letting you know. It's in the afternoon. All the men over here who's not able to talk, please come there. I would love to listen to you and not just talk. That's my first answer. Yes, please feel free to clap. I'm very good happy with applause.
Thanks, Nikhil, for that. Carina, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, happy to. Though I think Nikhil's pretty much covered context setting. But, you're absolutely right, because I think this is such a childhood issue for boys, for young men, for generations, right? Decades and decades, we've heard this statement like, boys are strong, big boys don't cry, boys don't cry. And when we even think about what strength means today, what does strength mean to you today? If someone can answer. What is it to be strong? Yeah.
Again, just women answer.
Yeah, I was gonna say we heard from one boy today, but one is
that boy was me, Carina.
Okay. But a lot of women here talked about vulnerability and speaking your mind and being emotional, but for boys or men, for the longest time, being strong equals endurance. How much can you take, right? How much can you keep taking? What pain can you keep enduring? How strong are you really? And you'll see when you talk to your friends, like guys that are friends, how was your day? Fine. Even when I talk to my husband so many times, I'm like, so what happened today? How are you feeling? Fine. If I talk to my dad, fine. But as women, we have, this entire spectrum of feelings that we share. But it all kind of goes back to childhood and what we've been taught means to be strong, what we've been taught means to be a man, right? And then, of course, that has this ripple effect and trickle down into healthcare, into how you are a partner, into how you are a family member, into how you are a colleague. And we're going to get into a lot of that, Ashish. So over to you.
Thanks so much. I think evidence says, and evidence when Nikhil asked the questions, that women are the foremost in men's studies. Because the men didn't answer, it was only the women answering. So evidence says that women are sensitive to men's issues. The question then comes across, are men sensitive to their own challenges? So when Carina said about being strong, about endurance, I was reminded of this quote which says that when there's a hard storm, a couple of weeks ago there was this bad snowstorm in Boston, those hard, full-grown trees break in the air. What survives is the soft grass. So softness doesn't necessarily mean how we interpret it as not manly, not masculine, and so on and so forth. My next question is for Carina. Carina is the founder of Hum Care, and Hum Care was founded partly based on Carina's own experience with PCOS and the limitations that came with accessing non-judgmental care, free health care. You've since expanded to workplace mental health, fatherhood, family care, health care. When you look at men in families and organizations that you serve, what patterns of struggle are you seeing that the healthcare system isn't catching?
So just to tell you guys a little bit about what I do, my journey in the healthcare space personally started many, many years ago, over 15 years ago, with my own struggles with my physicality, my mental health struggles, with my lifestyle issues with PCOS. Started Hum Care. Hum means us in Hindi, and we all need our lives to be a little less lonely, which is why we're here. But our company actually started with this focus in family planning, women's health, with a specific focus in postpartum. Very quickly, we understood, the different white spaces when it comes to inclusive care and what the emotional, physical, mental health needs really are in the workplace today. Going back to what we talked about earlier, which is men are trained and conditioned socially, culturally to be strong. How much pain can you really endure, right? What can you keep on taking until you keep saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm fine until I'm hospitalized. I'm fine until, someone has a heart attack. I'm fine until I just can't take it anymore. And it's an SOS crisis situation. Today, what we see in the healthcare space is, number one, men are 50% less likely to seek help when they have a medical concern and they're struggling. Men are also 35% less likely than women to go see a doctor when they're injured or when they are in a crisis situation. They take as much time as possible to avoid. Today, while, of course, healthcare does exist in workplaces, and it's something that we have kind of progressed on and growing every single day, utilization today is a huge, huge issue. So when we look at the data, right? So let's say a company has a mental health employee assistance program, or they have 360-degree wellness. The utilization is so different when it comes to men versus women in the workplace. Negligible numbers when it comes to men, specifically for mental health. Typically, you see increased utilization in medical or GP consults, but only when someone's really, really sick. Since childhood, I think every single person in this room has probably heard prevention is better than cure. But when it comes to health of grown men and young adults and grown adults, why is it that we're only looking at healthcare in a crisis situation? A lot of times we've actually also seen, and data shows that men are also 25% more likely than women to hide symptoms from a doctor and pretend and downplay what they're feeling because they're embarrassed. There's a lot of self-stigma to even just come out and say, I'm just feeling absolutely terrible and I feel like I'm dying. But instead it'll be like, oh, I feel like I have a light headache, but I'm fine. And the point is that why are we so afraid of sharing that we're not okay, right? And it's much more than just saying, here's healthcare, use it, or here's a safe space, go in here and talk to a therapist. It's about changing that conversation, changing how it actually feels and giving yourself permission as a man to feel like, hey, maybe I'm not okay and it's okay to talk to somebody. But it isn't a fight alone of that one person. I think it's all relational. Families, workplaces, friends, all of us have a role to play in redefining what it is to be a man today.
Thanks, Carina. This takes me back to this point about we go to a doctor when we have a fracture, the orthopedic. But there is also the possibility of the fracture of the mind. Do we recognize that and do we seek help and support at that point of time? Because if you don't, who will? You only have one you. My next question goes to Nikhil. Nikhil, men account for 70% of suicide deaths in India. They're far less likely to seek help. What is it specifically about Indian masculinity, the expectation to be the breadwinner, the pressure of being a return on investment for families, that makes men so vulnerable to mental health struggles, and while being unable to admit that they're struggling?
I want to try and answer that through my own experience. I am going to say something vulnerable. Please be ready. So about 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with clinical anxiety. I did not know at that time it was clinical anxiety because I thought that I'm about to have a heart attack because that's what anxiety sometimes feels like. It feels like there's something wrong with your heart, and your body. It was, a friend of mine who was also going through, therapy actually pointed out that what you are going through could be not related to the body, but actually related to the mind. It took me every bit of courage that I have in my body to go to a therapist, because I'm talking about like 9-10 years ago. The stigma of a man kind of saying that I'm going to go to a therapist was so enormous. And for me, I just kind of had a lot of shame inside of me, thinking that if I go to a therapist, it probably means agreeing and accepting that there's something wrong with me. And is there anything wrong with me? Also, I need to set context over here. I was at the peak of my career at this point, okay? My understanding of mental health was that if you're doing badly in your career, or badly in your life, that's when you go to a therapist, that's where you have a mental health issue. I was at Yash Raj Films, I was heading content development over there. I delivered 4 of the first 10 web series ever made in India, which were massive hits, okay? I was like the hot shot in digital ecosystem 10 years ago. It was really like, I was walking on like cloud 9 at that point of time, and then I started getting anxious. So somehow I made myself to a therapist. It took me, initially I was very resistant to it, so I was not really opening up. After about 2.5 months of sessions, the therapist one day tells me that I finally figured out what your issue is. I was like, finally. It's taken 2.5 months of money for you to figure this out. And then the session ended, and true story, and she's like, okay, I'll tell you next week. I was like, what? And then I had to wait for a week just to hear what is her diagnosis, and it was just the hardest thing in my life to do. Went back next year, and I was like, yes, tell me. And she's like, I think you're not very emotional. I was so offended by that. I was like, I am not emotional? Have you ever seen my Facebook long post? Do you know how much I cry in movies? Do you know like how sensitive I am as a husband to my wife's issues and needs and problems? How dare you say that? And the fact that I'm getting angry right now is proof that I'm emotional. And she's like, okay, I knew you were going to react like this. Let me reframe this, okay? It's not that you don't have emotions. You don't express them. I was like, that's not true. You are wrong. She's like, okay, let me ask you a question. This question changed my life. She asked me a question saying that, tell me what happens when after a hard day of work, your wife comes home and she's had a bad day. What happens? was like, she just talks about it, tells me like what went wrong, and and then we maybe watch a movie or whatever it is, cuddle, and then go to sleep. It's like, correct. Now tell me what happens after you have a bad day at work. I was like, I keep my work life and home life very separate. I don't bring my issues at home, I don't want to bring the problems to my home. So yeah, that's how I operate. And she looks at me and says, you and every man in India. I said, okay. And she's like, here's the issue. Every man in India feels compelled to believe that the burdens of society, the burdens of the world, saving of everything around them lies on their shoulders. So they don't share these issues with their family members. They don't share these issues with their spouses, with their best friends, etc., etc. And then it just resides inside of them. And it keeps building and building and building. And in some cases, like yours, it kind of comes out as clinical anxiety. In other cases, it turns into alcoholism. In some cases, it turns into domestic violence. In some cases, it turns into substance abuse, right? It's all kinds of things that happen when you just bury your emotion and not express too much, right? Up until that time, and this is a very weird statement to say, up until that time, I did not think that I was a man. When I say it's a weird statement to say, because I thought I was a very progressive, woke person, and I was like, I'm a human being. I'm not just like a man, right? And it's in that therapy session I realized my entire life was, my clinical anxiety did not come from a chemical imbalance in my brain. It came because of social conditioning of patriarchy, and everything that I have led my life up until that time came because of the things that I was supposed to do instead of things I wanted to do. As an example, I've been a writer. I was a teen journalist. I started writing at the age of 14 years. I've interviewed Shah Rukh Khan at 19 years. I've interviewed Michael Schumacher at 17 years. These are real things. You can go online and look it up, okay? And yet, I would imagine that the easiest path for someone like me who does these things at such a young age is go to an arts or humanities college, right? I remember being at a table, with my my parents' friends, where they asked, just before I was in 11th or 12th standard, and there was conversation going on, and they said, so what is Nikhil going to do? He's so good at, journalism, etc. You're going to send him to Stephens or, one of these great arts institutions in India. And my parents just very nonchalantly, no, that's a hobby. He's obviously going to do engineering. And I was like, what? And I did not, honestly, till that point of time, when I didn't know what I want, But I was very clearly told that this is not what you want. What you want as a boy in our country is engineering, is MBA, is a certain kind of career which says that, as we spoke about that, that ultimately your entire value in life comes down to a number. What is that number in the, how much marks are you making? How much CTC do you get? How many houses do you have? How many cars do you have? What designation do you have? It's all about a number. There's an investment that has been made by your parents, and if you're able to give that investment back, then your life has worth. It's a popular thing, right? Your network is your net worth, etc., etc. No one says your self-worth should not come from your net worth. That is not a good thing. That's a terrible, terrible thing. But that's what all of us are socialized into thinking. So again, as someone who's a very privileged man, upper caste, upper class, Hindu man in India, living in a city, I should be the last person to have problems. But the point is that the socialization is so deep. Every man in India genuinely thinks that the burdens of the world are on us. And that is why, when are men in India committing suicide, when they fail at a job, when they fail at an exam, this is the reason for someone thinks that I don't have any other option in life but to die because I failed at something. Because we are not telling boys in our country that it's okay to fail. If you fail, that does not mean your life does not have any value anymore. That is what we're dealing with at this point of time. So again, let me put it all in a very simple way, right? Here's what is the actual issue that is going on, right? And I'm going to say this in a very certain subsection in society. I'm not going to say this is like a broad thing. I'll talk about particularly tier 1 and tier 2, right? In a subsection of society, we have now been comfortable after centuries of oppression, centuries of, exploitation and marginalization of women. We are finally telling women that you don't just need to be a nurturer, you can also be a provider, right? So women can be independent, women can do whatever they want, women can have any job they want, they can choose whether they want to work or they want to be at home, they can choose whether they want to have a child, not have a child. In certain subsection of society, that is a choice now being afforded to women because of the feminist movement. But at the same time, we have not told any men that you don't just have to be a provider, you can also be a nurturer. That conversation is absent We have not had that conversation. So there are women who are saying that, hey, I don't want to sit at home and I want to, work, which is absolutely fair. You should not have to. But no, if a man says today that I actually don't think that I want to work for a couple of years because I want to take time off and take care of myself, that man is going to be shamed, judged, his worth in society is going to be absolutely zero. And that is the problem. Men think that nurturing is not something any man should do. So that nurturing is not just, it starts from not being able to nurture yourself, but also then you are not able to nurture anything around you. There is an anger that comes from the fact that you were not ever given empathy as a human being and you were taught that nurturing is a wrong thing to do. That because of that, you have so much angst inside of you that first it starts as anger at yourself. When you look at the monologues, if your internal monologue of men and women are just so drastically different. Women are, standing in front of mirrors today saying, yes, queen, you go girl, etc., etc. And men are saying, gadhe, can I just say a gali, chutiye, tum kya kar raha hai, tune zindagi mein वापस fail kar liya, you what an idiot you are. This is what boys are saying to each other. This is what boys are saying to themselves. My inner monologue, even today, if I say something wrong, is you are an idiot. It's not like, it's okay, it happens. That is not my dispensation, and that is what then needs to change. Men need to be able to have empathy for themselves so that they can also have empathy for anybody else around them.
Thanks, Nikhil. And Nikhil also inadvertently answered the next question. So I've got a question. I'm going to skip that, but I want to sort of share this aspect that, what Nikhil shared in responding about suicide. If you go to the psychology of shame, Brené Brown, she talks about shame is categorized by secrecy, silence, and judgment. You take a can of beer or Coke and you keep shaking it. What develops inside? The pressure. What's the possibility that's going to happen? It'll burst. That's exactly the same with human emotions. When we talk about suicide, Indian society does not say the S word. And unfortunately, when there is a suicide, the narrative of the person is then characterized just by the way he or she or they chose to end it, not the way they chose to live it.
Can I just add one very tragic comedy thing that I read where I think it was ISC, I might be getting the name of the institution wrong, but when student suicides in ISC got too many students and too many men had committed suicide, their answer was, we should take off the fans. The answer wasn't that we should do something about mental health in our campus. They took off the fans because they thought the reason that people are killing themselves because there are fans. This is the state of mental health in our country.
So just to again take that forward, in my 6 years of clinical work in Mumbai, every time we were asked to do a workshop for a school and we touched on suicide, they said, can you talk about it without mentioning the word suicide? And I'm like, So when Nikhil spoke about his clinical anxiety, in my clinical work in India, I was trying to sort of diagnose a woman who was in for therapy, not versatile in English. And she said, can I explain it in Hindi? And I said, sure. She said, मुझे घबराहट होती है, बहुत घबराहट होती है और मुझे नहीं पता चलता है क्यों घबराहट हो रही है. And bang on, we were able to then identify what was going on. Nikhil, thank you for sharing your personal journey narrative with clinical anxiety. And because we're on the subject of suicide, I'd like to bring myself in. My mid-career change to mental health was catalyzed by the suicide of an immediate family member. Because we don't talk about it. And what you don't talk about becomes Lord Voldemort, those who are familiar with Harry Potter. That which shall not be named. So we'll go to the next question for Carina, which is, Carina, walk us through the ripple effects of how does a father's untreated mental health struggle in his 20s and 30s affect his partner, his children, and the workplace?
So this is a loaded question because I think that there are multiple ripple effects on everything. One, when you do struggle with your mental health, you're not able to fully thrive as an individual. You are not living your fullest mental, physical, emotional potential. But the ripple effects, of course, on your life, being a parent, being a partner, being a co-worker are several. Going back to what Nikhil talked about, just talking about this wave of feminism, talking about equality, women now being given that, not even being given that option, but just the conversation about being independent, being both, right? Why do you have to choose between being a nurturer and a provider? I know I don't choose. But the question is, for men, the conversation hasn't fully shifted from that traditional provider conditioning to now also being a nurturer, also being a friend, also being a life partner, being a hands-on parent, actually attending, you know, a report day or a sports day at your child's school. Usually when you actually see these, it's usually the mothers that are there, and occasion, you know, one dad or two. When we look at the ripple effects of struggling with mental health and then growing up with that and leaving that suppressed, bubbling kind of feeling, number one, of course, there's going to be severe communication and conflict at home, right? Because you feel that, or the man feels that no one knows what you're going through, which further isolates you more and more. You feel lonely on your problems because number one, you're not sharing, but number two, you're not sharing because you feel like no one understands, and number three, you feel like you can't share because that's gonna make you look weak, and you're meant to have it together, right? That's what you've been told since you were a kid. So definitely communication, conflicts at home, obviously trickling down into intimacy, relationship issues, your partner feeling like they have to lift that burden and that emotional labor of being the partner, being both parents, right, for your children. Of course, being a neglectful, absentee father, not because you want to, but just because you don't know any other way, really, of course, has severe effects on development, emotional cues. Your children are constantly learning from you, right? So that can't be great. Moving into being a co-worker, a colleague at work, obviously you're not your best self. Depression, anxiety, mental health challenges, they come with a huge burden. One, of course, on your performance, but even if you're doing really fabulously at work, like you had talked about, it comes with this huge emotional burden and a personal burden, right? You're not actually feeling good. Mental health, of course, is hugely linked to physical health. The interesting thing, and to share, so at Hum, we obviously pitch a lot and talk to a lot of HRs, CHROs, DEI heads. And I remember I was having this chat with a head of HR at a really big manufacturing company. And we were pitching mental health, having a helpline, having unlimited therapy, sending a counselor to the office, the factory. And the HR person looked at me and in a very happy way was like, you know, Carina, I'm so happy to tell you that our utilization in mental health is 0. No one uses it. And I was like, that's extremely frightening. And he was like, no, everyone's doing so well, no one needs it here. And I was like, okay, can you talk to me a little bit about your attrition? Can you talk to me about the physical aspects? Are your employees feeling well? Have they been falling really ill lately? What do the annual health checkup, you know, analysis charts look like for your employees? And those were haywire. So I was like, do you not think that there's a link between the mental and the physical? And he was like, no, they're very different. You know, it's very separate for us. We don't need mental health. So the interesting thing is that even at work, a lot of employers, a lot of people think that non-utilization means you're doing well, not that fundamentally people are ashamed, embarrassed. There's, of course, stigma from society, but self-stigma that we've grown up feeling that impact that. So your mental health, when you're not feeling great, your personal life suffers. Of course, you're not performing your best. You physically don't feel that good, which of course ties into your immunity, your mental health, depression, anxiety, or whatever else you're feeling. But you're also just not living your fullest life. And WHO defines mental health as being emotionally, mentally, physically healthy. It needs to be an all-round approach, not just, oh, I look fit and I'm a #1 employee this month at work, but at home I can't sleep at all. I'm suffering from insomnia. I can't eat. I'm so anxious. My heart is pounding, but I don't know. I can't talk to anyone. So it's tremendously sensitive and important, and it just has a huge all-rounded effect on everything.
Thanks, Carina. Nikhil, would you like to add on to that briefly?
Which part?
The part or the question where a father's untreated mental health, that struggle in his 20s, 30s, and his young days has a ripple effect on his children.
Karina's answered that pretty well.
Okay, super. So just to sort of wrap that up and come to the final question, time flies when you're having fun, especially with two such wonderful people here.
Such a fun panel, guys.
Very, very quickly to sum up what Carina said, the outside is a continuation of the inside. You know, what you feel, what you carry inside continues outside. In your thought behavior, in your action, in your assumption, in your perception. This is a question for Nikhil. We've seen young men drawn to manosphere content. Nikhil, you've said, be a man, yaar, is meant to provide an alternative to that angry, toxic content. What is so attractive about these things? What's attracting young men towards this content?
It's a lot to be said over here. I think it comes, let me just start by saying, I think that there is genuine pain that men have, right? Which has been turned into a punchline. By men also, not just like, again, we think that it is just women who are targeting men. It's not at all. It is like, you know, most of the men who kind of end up taking their own lives also feel unsupported mostly by other men in their lives who are also shaming them or mocking them or bullying them, etc., right? When you are lonely and you don't have a safe space to express what you're going through, you know, there are either you try to kind of go around with the people, limited people that you have, but what has happened, especially after COVID, is that people have now started going online and started recognizing that, well, there are communities that are going to listen to me. It's just that those communities sometimes are, without them knowing, are predatory communities. They are actually exploiting your pain and finding a way of becoming rich or becoming powerful or becoming successful or getting virality by just giving you a very clear villain for your problem. When you don't have something to fight for, you are given something to fight against. It is as simple as that. It's like, when you don't have anything, you don't have love in your life, the easiest line then is to find something to hate. And the answer and the villain that has been given by a certain kind of far-right community online that recognizes that these young men are lonely is by telling them, listen, you join us, and the reason for your problem actually is not unemployment, it is immigration. It is not the fact that the government cannot do much for you. It is the fact that, there is these other, communities or religions that are a problem. It is not your own issue. It's not patriarchy. It is women. So suddenly you're given all of these villains, easy villains in your life that you can, that rile you up and then make you believe that if actually these people go, my problems will be solved. But your problems are not going to be solved because it's nothing to do with them. It is to do with it's to do with this unfortunate concept called patriarchy that does benefit men, but oppresses everybody. It especially oppresses the boys that once, these men were. I say this quite often, but I feel like in our society, boys are asked to be men before they learn what it could mean to be human. And I think that is really the core crux of this issue. We need to create safer spaces for young men. And I also want to say this very clearly. I don't think the emotional labor of this should be done by women. I think that we have passed that point where, we kind of keep telling, aap help karo na aadmiyon ko. If the man is beating you, but you have to take it and be like, it's okay, you are the safe space for that man. No, you absolutely should not take shit from any man who is assaulting you or is berating you or is mocking you or is shaming you. It's not your job anymore. I think it is the job of men like me. It is the job of men who have empathy, who have the privilege of empathy. It is the job of men who understand why this is wrong and bring other men into, include men in this conversation. If I see a male friend of mine going through something, whether it is, getting attracted to the manosphere, or it is, feeling sad in life or feeling depressed or dejected or feeling, it is my duty as a male friend of theirs to kind of create a space for this person to speak. And if they say you are fine, you have to ask again. You have to be like, no, I know you're not fine. I want you to speak up. I know you, this is the safe space. If men don't create these safe spaces for other men in their lives, they are going to do extreme measures of either taking this out as anger on others or taking it out as anger on themselves and, dying by suicide. So we really, and that is honestly the reason why I created a show like Be a Man Yaar. It was so important for me that when the entire conversation is about how masculinity is toxic, and it is in many ways, right? But that is not all masculinity is. There is so many beautiful aspects of it. There are fathers that, our fathers are, they are not, aggressive or angry or, fearsome because that's who they are as people. It's because that is what they've been conditioned into. But at the same time, a father is working so hard to kind of earn you a living, earn you a life that because of which you are where you are today. It's not that he doesn't want to be away from his child when the child is born. But the government of India gives 2 weeks of paternity leave for men and 6 months of maternity leave for women. And again, I'm not at all saying that women should not get that leave. They must. It is so important. They've given birth to a child. They need their bodies to recover. But when you give men only 2 months, you are actually, as a government, as a nation, you are saying that actually your bond with your child doesn't matter. And actually the child should be raised by the woman. So you're also putting enormous labor on the women saying, "Tumi raise karo." And you're also telling, the father that your bond doesn't matter. You can just go back to work after 2 weeks. But again, unfortunately, we don't even have the privilege. Men don't have, they have to go to work because they have to put food on the table. And that is, again, disproportionately on their plate. Now, if we have more equality, men should also, recognize that when a woman is working, it actually means that the work on your plate is being taken off. Take that time to nurture yourself. Take that time to nurture the other people in your life. And if you have a child, please take the time to nurture your child. It's the most important thing that you can do in this world. I wanted to make sure that any time that if we keep talking about toxic masculinity, nothing's going to change. What is the alternative? And I wanted to kind of create this idea of positive masculinity, which I genuinely believe exists in most of the men around us. It's just that it is not spotlighted. And I wanted to call all kinds of men on my show and spotlight that part of them. And some of these men may have even said things publicly which might be, considered like, "Arey, ye kaise bol diya? That's not woke." But there is a good part to every human being and every man, and I want to just bring that out. There is a person who can say a certain kind of thing, but on my show will come and talk about how much they love their wife, how much they love their mother, how much they love their daughter, how much they love their sister. And I want that out. Because we need those alternate narratives. Because if those narratives do not exist, we will keep believing the narrative that exists, and we will never have communication or kindness or empathy between genders.
Thanks, Nikhil. Carina, you want to add to that quickly?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to just jump on that paternity point that you made. So, interestingly so, India, the law just gives fathers 2 weeks of paternity leave, mothers 6 months. But the tough thing is, and we see this a lot, is that most men don't even avail that paternity leave. So when you talk to companies, when you talk to people, they're like, no, the men don't even want to go on paternity leave. They take 2 days and they come back to work. And, it's not even about they have to do it because of food needs to be put on the table because it's paid. But there's so much stigma around, and self-stigma again, just around saying, hey, I want to spend time with my newborn baby, I need that. Or, hey, I want to be at home with my partner, I need that, and they need that. And people are embarrassed, ashamed, you think it's weak, you think it's lame, or, just not important. And that's, again, going back to that fundamental issue of what can we do in the workplace, what can we do as members of society to actually make care feel okay and make caring and being a caring, empathetic person also be like equal being a man, right? And I think that's the kind of thing we need to change.
I'm just going to add one thing, and I know we are kind of running out of time, but I feel it is incumbent on me as a man, and I feel every man who is progressive and has empathy, it is incumbent on them to kind of break these patterns. So I have the privilege of being the founder of my own company. So I took 3 months paternity leave. I want to tell you something that I did, which I'm very proud of, and I think if at all you have a baby at some point, and if you're a man, try to do this. I realized that when we were pregnant, I had a daughter last year. She's the joy of my life. Her name is Noor. When we were pregnant, we threw a baby shower for my wife, and it's one of the most wonderful things. You know, there's a baby shower, all her friends come, their gifts, and there's a beautiful warm vibe. We took a lot of pictures, and I realized in the baby shower that all the people who had come to the baby shower were her friends. And my friends weren't there because it's typically women who come to the baby shower, right? Or like a couple of common couples that you might know. And then I realized, why is there no such thing as a dad baby shower? And I just realized that there is no such concept, you know. No man who has become a father who I know has ever called me for a dad baby shower. And then I realized his dads don't do this thing. And I said, then why should I not do this thing as a man who wants to do this thing? So I threw myself a dad baby shower. I called 20 of my favorite men who are fathers, who I think have a beautiful bond with their child. And we had like this beautiful dinner. 20 of us, you know, just came and spoke about our children and how much they mean to us and how much we love them. And they all gave me advice, and it was one of the most wholesome things. Nakul was part of that. You know, one of my dear friends. And it is, I think, a highlight of my life. I haven't been able to do something as wholesome as that. What a wonderful evening. Of course, after that evening, everybody was like, this gang is now the best gang in this world, and we are going to create a WhatsApp group, and we're going to go to Goa every month, and we're going to do everything. 2 हफ्ते उस ग्रुप पे बात हुई, उसके बाद सब अपनी जिंदगी में वापस चले गए. The only time someone responds on the group is if there's some Excel sheet is required. Can you tell me how to buy a stroller? Here's an Excel sheet I made. But if someone says, oh, I had another baby, there is like 2 people who comment congratulations, and the 18 don't. So that is just still a manly thing that we need to break out of. But it is on us to break out of that, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you so much, Nikhil, Carina. Before we come to the Q&A, we have a mic on the left, a mic on the right. Up left, up right. We will go 1 question left, 1 question up left, 1 question right, up, and then come down in the interest of paucity of time. Just to sum up this for the guys, how many of you
I also want to say, I know that we're getting late. For people who will stay here, we will do a selfie together.
Yeah. So taking off from there, how many of you guys ask each other, Kya haal hai yaar? How you doing? What's up? And the other person says, all good, man. You know? How many times have you said, not so great, yaar, can we have coffee? I need to chat up. Safe space between 2 people. Yeah. Can we take the first question?
Cool. Hi, Nikhil. Hi, Carina. So we touched upon the subject of men.
This looks like a stand-up open mic. The way you
Sorry?
Looks like an open mic. Okay, but sorry, go on.
Okay. So we touched upon the fact that, you know, men can be great nurturers as well as providers or just nurturers. Not to take names, but recently one of India's greatest boxers shamed her ex-husband in a public show for living on her money, whereas in her own autobiography, she had dedicated that to her ex-husband, saying, I dedicate this to him who's taken up the responsibility of being an amazing nurturer and all of that. There is always 2 sides of the story, but what do you think? I mean, do you think this patriarchy or conditioning of, you know, men being the providers deeply entrenched in women and men alike?
Of course, you know, yeah. And when you look at it, some of the most patriarchal things that men have been taught have been by their mothers. You know, right. And it's not because they are again evil or whatever it is, right? It's also because they were conditioned to believe like that. Right. They were oppressed in a certain way that they believed that the only way for anybody to have a successful life or career is if the man is earning, or if the man is doing a certain kind of a job that a man is supposed to do. And then you have to break the pattern. The pattern will be broken if you have self-awareness, if you have conversations like this, if you ask the right questions, and if you don't make this a men versus women issue. It's not a gender war. There is no such thing. This is what Andrew Tate tells you. Do not listen to Andrew Tate. For God's sake, please do something better with your life. You know, so this is not the thing that we should really, you know, believe in. We are being, again, I mean, there's a whole argument to how, you know, our time is being exploited by people who actually sell you things to kind of get rich themselves, but actually don't offer any meaning to you. So we need to get that self-awareness. We should learn a little bit of sociology, a little bit of humanities, a little bit of arts, expand our thinking, you know. I mean, when you think about it, right, this whole idea of two men on a podcast is the biggest cliche, right? Every podcast is two men on a podcast, two men having a conversation. The reason that Be a Mania, my show, worked was because you don't hear two men get together and not talk about finance, not talk about success, not talk about fitness, not talk about how to make enough kind of money or be successful in life, but actually talk about feelings and talk about mental health and talk about vulnerability and talk about how much we, you know, care for the women in our lives, you know, and care for ourselves and care for our men in our lives, you know. Nakul is a very dear friend of mine, also common friend of Ashish and mine. We spoke so deeply at that day about, you know, why don't our fathers hug us or are comfortable with those hugs, you know, and how do we change that? How do we find a way to hug them more? These are the kind of conversations we need to have. But again, you know, we need to understand that this socialization, this conditioning, patriarchy is on everyone. Yes. Nobody is free from it. So instead of pointing and saying, this person is wrong, this person is wrong, self-introspect, how do we all do better and create a better, kinder, hopeful world for each other?
Thank you.
Thanks, Nikhil. Top left, I can't see the mic because the light's in my eyes. Please go ahead, sir.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bhuvish Mehta. I help startups scale up, and my purpose is to contribute to India as much as I can. Rapid fire question to all three of you. If you had unlimited resources, a magic wand, what's the first thing you'd do to solve this problem at scale? So like very practically, what is the first thing we can do today? We scale this for India and solve it.
I will create 200 seasons of Be a Mania. No, I think that honestly, we should have gender sensitization in schools at a very early age. We don't have that. When there is a conversation of menstruation, boys are asked to leave the room in schools and said, you go, this is about women. Agar boys ko pataoge nahi ki women ki bodies kaise operate hongi, you will not have the empathy for that. When we have sex education, it's turned as a punchline. You know, I still remember in my college, in my school, when the sex education part came, when literally like the part about the male anatomy and female anatomy came, the biology teacher came and so I know this is going to be your favorite session, but we are going to try to not make jokes. And then it was a 5-minute conversation and she moved on. We don't actually have any conversation about gender or sexual sensitization in our society. We need to attack this from an education perspective. Parents need to work much harder in our, you know, and again, I think millennial parents at this point of time need to do whatever they can to not just create a society of, see, I feel today it's much easier to raise a strong woman than to raise a sensitive man. And I don't think we can have a country of strong women without having sensitive men also as part of the country. And you cannot have gender empowerment if you don't have education of men as well.
Yeah. So I actually agree with that. I think you have to start young, 100%. So we need to actually be starting in school. What I would think and what I would recommend is we need to have mental health programs in schools. I think in general, stigma against and around mental health isn't just man, woman. I think there's just stigma all around. Most of us find it hard to admit that we're seeing a therapist. But if we start young, have counseling psychologists in schools, make it okay to go meet one, have that entire conversation around being in touch with your emotions, your mental health, starting young, I think we'd be much happier as a society.
Thank you so much. Top right. Is there someone at the mic? Top right?
You should also listen to the bottom folks. Poor bit.
There.
Feel bad for them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, my name is Leela Gidwani. I'm a freshman at Brookline High School here in Massachusetts.
Hi, my name is Neve Agarwal, and I'm a freshman here at Newton North High School in Newton, Massachusetts.
So in my school, they have classes for mental health and suicidal, and it's like common to teach the students about it. So they made it really comfortable for us to just talk about it.
Why do you think conversations about mental health and suicide are avoided in most Indian communities, especially among young men?
I'm happy to take that first. So that's so great to hear that you have mental health at your school. That's not that common in India. I think just going back to everything we talked about, right? Just the concept of boys don't cry, boys have to be strong, men are the pillars, the strong family members that we all lean on and cry on their shoulders. I think it's just how we've all been conditioned for decades and generations. And while there is some sort of shift right now, I think there's still a lot of progress to be made, and there are a lot of people that don't know which way to think. Is it following the traditional approach, the one that we've always known, or is it also now being okay with the new normal and maybe being a little bit more open or different? So I think it just goes back to the narrative of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a provider, and how we can redefine that today. Yeah.
There was a second question, right?
Yeah, there was. So what do you think is the best healing process for a teenager or a man when they are suffering?
Could you say that a little louder?
Yeah, sure. What do you think is the best healing process for a teenager or a man suffering from mental health?
Healing process. Great question. If you can afford it, I completely 100% advocate and endorse therapy. It has changed my life. It is the reason I am who I am today. It is the reason I started my company, Yuva. Therapy has been about 7 or 8 years in therapy at this point of time with the same therapist. It is possibly the second longest relationship of my life after my wife. By the way, it's my anniversary today. So I'm here because of all of you. So my first relationship is also very important to me, which is why this second relationship was needed for me to have a better first relationship with my wife. Right? It has made my relationship with my wife, with my mother, with the women in my life, also the men in my life, my male friends, as well as the daughter that I have. I have the capacity to be able to express love for her. I have the capacity to talk to the world about how deeply I am happy that I am a father and how much I care. None of this wouldn't have happened if therapy did not open me up to make it okay for me to say things like that loving is good, empathy is good, kindness is amazing. It's not something to be looked down upon. Kindness is cool, friends.
Thank you so much. We come to the end of this fantastic session. Thank you for being a great audience, and thank you to Carina and Nikhil for this amazing section. Just before we close, one of Nikhil's shows and a common friend that we have often says this: why do two men do not say to each other, I love you, yaar, or give each other a hug? So I'm going to tell Nikhil, I love you, yaar, and I'm going to give Nikhil a hug right here so that we're able to capture that for the man to man. And I can see two people hugging each other in the audience, which is fantastic.
We also discussed this on the show.
We did, absolutely.
With Nakul.
Shreya.
Appreciate this. Can we do a selfie right now?
Sure.
Okay, I would love to take a picture with whoever's left now, with everyone else having left and being very kind and supportive. Can we have people just come here, thoda bahut, if you can, from here, we'll take a really nice selfie. When I take the picture, just pretend you enjoyed this, okay? This will go up on Instagram. I want people to know this was the best panel at Harvard. So you have to, if you liked it, that's great. If you don't like it, don't be in the picture. Go away. Thank you for being here. It was so nice that all of you could spend your time talking and having this conversation, listening to me. There's an AMA that I'm doing tomorrow in the afternoon. Please come if you have more questions. I'm here for both days. I would love to have one-on-one conversations with as many people as possible. This is a subject I'm very passionate about. Also, if you like this conversation, I'm Taneja. I'm on Instagram. Please tag me in your pictures.
Yeah.